Hello and welcome to Chapter 37 of my TearRing Saga Champions of Utena low turn count playthrough. In this chapter, I am going to be unleashing the full force of the save staff as we stitch together some of the more unreliable strategies in this run. I hope you guys don't mind the opening sequence and the loading screens too much, because they are a fairly significant feature of this video. So, Ente has gone and gotten herself kidnapped by the cult of Gurkzel, so it is now Runan's turn to head over to the nearest shrine and start smacking them around. And as we've come to expect, Runan's version of this chapter is significantly more difficult than Holmes's equivalent. Whereas Holmes merely had to grab his holy sword from a sparsely populated map, Runan not only has to do that, he also has to rout the enemy afterwards, and there are far more enemies on this map than there were on Holmes's one. So we are going to have some fairly extensive preparations here, and I am once again going to be saving after doing this, just so I don't have to repeat it all later. We are once again deploying pretty much all of our good combat units, but there are a couple of interesting wrinkles in what I'm handing out. Firstly, Runan is going to be taking the main gauche, which he needs because he is going to be facing a large amount of combat in this chapter, and he needs to dodge as many of those attacks as possible. I'm also handing out my remaining miracle charms, because Runan is not the only unit who is going to be at risk during the course of this map, and miracle charms make some pretty long and unreliable enemy phases just that little bit more reliable. This map I finally remembered to trade the Sylphid Tome back to Sierra, and she is also pulling out the bridge key that we picked up back in chapter 24, because she is going to need to use that in order to open the way for Runan to reach the Holy Sword. Raffin takes the Canaan Spear, which is a very strong weapon that he is not going to be using at all on this map. It's much more important for him to have the Brave Lance that he already had, so keep that in mind. You might be wondering why I'm not bothering to bring Raphael to this map, because he was very strong over the last couple. But I'm doing this because he is forced to dismount on this map on account of it being indoors, and without his mount, his stats are significantly lower, and also he is unable to use any weapons other than swords, so there's really no particular advantage to deploying him here. On the other hand, the same could be said of Naron, and Raphael's stats are actually better than Naron. And additionally, Raphael has the Urbanite skill, which takes effect on this map. So overall, that is an improvement that I could have done. Optimization really does never end. Anyway, let us begin. The first thing that we need to be aware of here is that Runan needs his full movement on every single turn in order to reach the Holy Sword as fast as possible. And he also needs to be empowered here, because there is one specific enemy that he is going to need to kill personally later on. One of the more frustrating parts of this map is the fact that there are 4 enemy witches here, and they are going to be a real thorn in my side, warping around randomly and dropping in on units that I assumed were safe. But we are going to be responding in kind by having Narcus transform into Sierra, so that we too have 2 powerful warp users who can just drop in wherever they like and deal with enemies before my other units can reach them. Rochelle is being ensorcelled here for no obvious reason, but we will be seeing the benefit of this in the upcoming player phase. Sierra has warped over to the boss's area, because unlike the boss of Holmes's equivalent of this map, This boss has a couple of nasty flunkies, and we want to kill them before we start facing the boss himself. So that is what Sierra is going to be doing on this upcoming enemy phase. And with the arrival of said enemy phase, we can see the other reason why this map is so annoying. There are 3 enemy summoners arranged along the top part of the map, and they are of course going to spam the crap out of their summon staves, creating a huge amount of monsters that will take forever to move and drag out all of the enemy phases far longer than I would like. Back with Sierra, she gets hit quite hard by this sorcerer, and that's why we needed to make sure to kill the other one on the player phase so she wouldn't get overwhelmed. Sierra is actually also going to be attacked by one of the witches on this enemy phase, and fortunately she is able to survive, otherwise this could have gotten a little hairier than it is. And one last thing to note is that I had Marielle equip Fire for this enemy phase rather than Starlight. And that is because Starlight is heavy enough that if she had it equipped, if a witch had decided to warp over, she would have faced being doubled and 1 round KO'd. So this way it would take 2 witches warping over near her in order to kill her. So that's much more reliable. So, moving into the second player phase, I'd like to now talk about our boss kill strategy. Sierra is not fast enough to double the boss, so she can't kill him on her own. So obviously we are going to have Narcus warp over to help her out. The boss, like the one in Holmes' equivalent of this map, has an Azoth, so we are going to have to kill him twice, this turn and the next turn. And that also means that we're going to have to deal with tanking an attack from the boss on the upcoming enemy phase. Now, it is possible, although quite unlikely, for Sierra to reach sufficient speed to double this boss with Sylphid, and in that case, we would be able to use Narcus for other things. If Sierra had hit that benchmark, I probably would have had her attack the boss on turn 1, and she would then have had to survive a pretty hairy enemy phase against both of the sorcerers and the boss all at once. But this is necessary because the boss also has an area of effect tome that he likes to equip on turn 2. And if that happens, then we would not be able to double him on turn 3 because he wouldn't have his heavy tome equipped. So that's a point where faster strategies are often riskier. Runen is now moving in towards the large cluster of Draco zombies on this map, and he does have to go this way and face them all on the upcoming enemy phase, and for this reason we gave him the main Goshen preparations. Fortunately, the Draco zombies aren't very accurate to begin with, and the main Ghost is available to reduce that accuracy still further. But because there are so many of them, this is still going to be a pretty tense enemy phase coming up, so we need all of the bonuses we can get on anyone who's going to be within range. Rishal has picked off a Nosferatu sorcerer to prevent him from harrying Raffen, and this is the reason why we ensorcelled him, to get a one-hit KO on this guy. So now, we are going to be using the save stuff, and the obvious reason for that is that we need to rig a Sing proc on Runen. The reason we want to do this is that it is fairly easy for Runen to be blocked off if he stays where he is, as the Draco zombies all move in to attack him. And it's quite difficult to get enough power to bust through them on the subsequent player phase to allow Runen to use his full movement. So instead, we are going to Sing for him and have him move to a position further up, where it is extremely unlikely that the Draco zombies will move in such a way as to block him off for the subsequent turn. Of course, doing this does mean that Lyria is going to be in range of several of the Draco zombies, and she is easily one-hit KO'd by them, so that's kind of scary. And this is where the Urbanite skill comes in handy for the second time this run. It's not just for keeping up in Chapter 29, it is also insurance for this map. She has some extra insurance as well in the form of the Miracle Charm that she's holding, and between all that, it's fairly likely that she will get through the upcoming enemy phase. However, it is not sufficiently likely in combination with Runan also having to dodge, so we are going to use the save staff again to lock in the successful Sing proc and make sure that we have somewhere to come back to just in case something goes wrong on the very risky enemy phase that we are facing. The rest of my units are hanging back to the south, which may be confusing because you'd think we'd need to press north in order to cut through these summoned enemies and reach the summoners in order to route this map. But the reason that we're not doing that yet is that there are still some witches floating around. Raffin killed a second one, but that still leaves 2 of them who could harass us. And because of their random warping around, there's a chance if I started to fight the summons that they could jump in and kill a unit that I thought was safe. And remember, we are already relying on a huge number of dodges to go our way as Runan and Lyria face the enemy Draco zombies. So anything that adds extra uncertainty to this particular enemy phase is to be avoided. We do have a plan for routing this map, so it's not going to end up being a problem that we are not moving on the summoners just yet. We are now being attacked by the Draco zombies, and that means we can see the convenient thing about them. The only weapon that they have is Fierce Breath, which has an area of effect, and that means that they are thinning their own numbers out by catching themselves within the area. In fact, several of these enemy Draco zombies die before they get a chance to attack any of our units, and that is a very good thing for me. What isn't so nice for me is that one of the witches has decided to warp quite close to where Runan needs to be moving. And this is both a blessing and a curse. Because she is going to be within walking range of Runan on the next enemy phase, her action is completely predictable, and that removes a frustrating RNG element from her. But on the other hand, Runan really does not want to have to face more enemies than he has to, and she is going to use that opportunity to attack him. So this is just another illustration of witches being stupid and frustrating to deal with. And obviously, since this is the finalized video, it's not going to end up being a problem. It's just something that I thought I should point out in this never-ending enemy phase. So the notable thing about this past enemy phase is the prevalence of area of effect tomes being used. The boss used Kishar's Wrath to attack Sierra and Narcus, and Sierra used her Azoth in order to survive, although Narcus was not even reduced to 0 HP. And all of the witches had Land Burst tomes. This means that it's tricky to protect fragile units on even turns in this map, until we deal with all of the annoying witches. And we are now fighting the boss for the final time, and we can see that Sierra and Narcus are now having significant trouble hitting him. And this is because of what I mentioned before. He equipped his area of effect tome, but he can't use it now that it's turn 3, meaning that he has no weapon equipped, and is thus not weighed down. This boosts his attack speed significantly, and therefore also his avoid, which makes the second kill of him much less reliable than the first one. Fortunately though, Sylphid is sufficiently accurate that they manage to get the kill on Nevka, and that's a significant obstacle to the completion of this map finally removed. And just in time too, because Runan is now only one move away from reaching the Holy Sword, and we still need Sierra to lower the bridge for him before he can reach it. We're going to take this opportunity to eliminate the third witch. She also is no longer weighed down by a tome, but Vega is so ridiculously fast that he doubles her anyway, and that means that he gets a free kill on her, which I will gladly take. We now need to figure out how to deal with the remaining Draco zombies, because there is a cluster of them near Lyria and the rest of our units, and Lyria is not able to outrun them because she has the same amount of movement as them. So she is going to be forced to take another enemy phase of combat with them, and she no longer has a miracle charm, so this upcoming one is going to be significantly more risky than the previous one. So we are once again saving in order to ensure against any such accidents. On the other hand, Runan has more than enough movement to outrun the Draco zombies, and because of that, they are going to have fewer opportunities to attack and potentially kill each other in the upcoming turns. So that large group of Draco zombies is likely to remain that size as Runan moves towards the Holy Sword. So in order to make Lyria safe on upcoming turns, we are obviously going to want to bait over as many of the Draco zombies as possible into reach of my powerful combat units who are able to kill them. It's actually pretty tricky for my physical units to one-round KO these Draco zombies because they have very high HP and protection. And so instead, we're going to be making good use of my magical units, in particular Marielle, because she has a 20 might tome that is effective against them, and they have low resilience, so she is easily able to cleanly destroy them despite her low level. Once again, we see the summoners spamming their summon staves and making even more monsters, and that pile-up is looking like it's going to be a very difficult knot to untangle when we eventually get around to it. So that's going to be, fun. Lyria manages to continue to dodge these Draco zombies, and in fact they do manage to kill one of their brethren in this part of the map, so that's also pretty good, and Urbanite is continuing to prove its use here. One of the Draco zombies gets distracted though, and flies off after Runan instead. But that is still good enough for the purposes of keeping Lyria safe, so that's fine. The Draco zombies are pretty much depleted in numbers now, but dealing with the ones near Runan is not going to be quite so easy as far as we can see, because Runan obviously cannot afford the time to stop and kill them as he goes, and there is no way for him to counterattack as he goes because they are using their Fierce Breath, which denies counterattacks. And anyway, he doesn't even have any 2-range weapons because Martel took all of the Levin swords. But don't worry, we do have a plan for that, and part of said plan is actually in motion here as Marielle gets ensorcelled. This puts her at a slightly ridiculous 80 effective attack against the Draco zombies nearby, which is enough to terminate them with extreme prejudice in a single hit. We are once again using the save staff here to lock in our gains so that we don't have to repeat those risky enemy phases again. And we also need to now worry about the enemy summons getting close to us. So Vega is going to be heading north to wall them off. He is fairly durable thanks to his Shram sword and soul, but because Shram is effective against monsters and has high critical, he's also very good at killing the summoned monsters, and so he is going to be taking quite a few hits, and his durability will be a little bit tested, so he's going to be using a herb in order to maximize his durability for this upcoming enemy phase. Meanwhile, we finally get rid of the Draco zombies by using our 2 effective tomes, and Sunflame and Starlight are both doing completely ridiculous damage to these Draco zombies, which is always nice to see. Even though Mariel is only level 8, she still has enough power for this. Additionally, Mariel is being supported by Rishel, which gives her extra accuracy and a chance to get a critical hit and really overkill some of these Draco zombies. We set up a vertical line for Lyria to sing to here, hoping for a refresh that could maybe help out somewhere, but we don't get it, and that's not too much of an issue because we pretty much have everything where we need it to be. Now, Runan is about to pick up the Varun Astra, but before we get to that, we need to talk about the trade strats that we're doing in order to make sure everyone stays alive as the Draco zombies arrive. Runan is trading his Miracle Charm to Sierra, so that she can survive a single lethal hit. Meanwhile, Narcus is trading away Runan's swords, so that Runan equips the Varun Astra, and Narcus is taking the main gauche and reverting so that he has the highest possible avoid against the breath weapons. So now, at long last, I think it is time to talk about the Holy Astras. So the Astras all have different combat stats, that is might, hit, and weight, but they have pretty similar extra effects. And the first of those that I want to mention is that they halve damage from breath weapons. And that's why I wanted Runan to have it equipped for this enemy phase. Their most important effect, however, is that they ignore the majority of the effects of the dragon skin shield. Oh, and here we see the final witch being killed off by a breath weapon, which is just excellent. Anyway, back to the Astras. They cut right through the dragon skin shield's protection bonus, as well as ignoring the anti-critical and anti-skill effects of said shield. So Runan is perfectly capable of getting a critical hit on dragon skin enemies with the Astra equipped. The only effective dragon skin that the Astras do not negate is the effective damage negation, and we are going to see that during this map, because there is a Draco zombie that has dragon skin on this map, and Runan's going to fight it with the Varun Astra. And despite the fact that the Astras are effective against monsters, and Draco zombies have the monster type, Runan is not going to be benefiting from effective damage in that combat, which makes it a little harder for him to get the kill in time. And now it is turn 5, which means it is time for our route strategy to come into play. It is time for Mariel to finally unleash Aura Rain, attacking the entire map in one go. She is near Rishel, so she's benefiting from that support again, and that means that she has near perfect accuracy against every enemy on the entire map, meaning that this is a very reliable way to do a lot of damage to everything. Of course, Mariel is not strong enough to one-hit KO every enemy on the map, but we are of course going to have Lyria rig a sing proc on her to finish it off. The crit bonus from the support also comes into play a little bit, giving Mariel some one-hit KOs on this first use of Aura Rain that she would not otherwise have gotten. So obviously we are going to be saving now in order to rig the sing proc, and once we do that, the only enemy left in the entire map will be the Draco zombie with dragon skin, who has been just tinking the Aura Rain attacks each time. Killing the Draco zombie on this map is going to require us to use Runan, and I actually made a slight mistake during this map, which is going to cost me the turn count that I was actually targeting here. So I actually reset quite a lot on this map, trying to use Narcus to bait the Draco Zombie into a position where Runen would be able to attack it on turn 5 player phase, but I was unable to persuade it to do so, and in order to fix that mistake, I would have had to go back several turns and rig an Adept proc from Sierra to kill the boss. This would have allowed me to use Narcus to bait the Draco Zombie further to the left on enemy phase 3, which would have given me the opportunity to force it into Runen's range on enemy phase 4. That would have allowed Runen to fight it on player phase 5 to end the map on this turn. But at this point, after so many Sing rigs, I was beginning to lose my patience with this run, and I was ready to let it finish and just be done with it. And so I decided to accept the 1 turn loss in exchange for my continued sanity. So the last few enemies are going down to Aura Rain now, and we are left with just that last enemy to deal with. It's worth noting that Sierra's action is available, just in case I had managed to get a low % miss against one of these enemies. She would have been able to clean up after me. So, in order to get the Draco Zombie closer to Runen, we are going to bait it in by putting him in range. He's obviously going to be equipping the Varunastra, but we also need to make sure that we position ourselves such that Narcus is not going to get caught in the blast when the Draco Zombie attacks Runen. So that is what we are doing here. Now, there's recently been some comments on my Chapter 21 video suggesting that it would be possible to raise Alicia up to level 16 for Flurry in time to shorten that map by killing Cranion. And if I was to fully improve this LTC run, I would put Chapter 11 after Chapter 15, so I think it would be a bit of a stretch to get Alicia up that quickly. But it is certainly possible to have her to level 16 by this point. And since the enemy Draco Zombie here has lower resilience and lower HP than Cranion, it's possible to have Alicia kill it instead, and that could potentially allow us to complete the map on turn 4 when Runen reaches the Varunastra. That would, I think, be an exceptionally stylish clear of this map. But it does have the problem that you would have to route all of the summoned enemies by turn 4, and because it has to be done by turn 4, we wouldn't have access to Aura Rain to help us get through that. And so I think pulling that off would be a really big challenge in a normal LTC context. Anyway, Runen is now finishing off the Draco Zombie in a single round thanks to a lucky Adept proc, and that routes the chapter and completes it in 6 turns. And so we have now permanently said goodbye to the world map feature, and we will be temporarily saying goodbye to Runen's army, because the next chapter is once again going to feature homes. But that is a matter for the next video, so I will see you then.